Hello and welcome to another edition of Island Learning Grenada Sunday. Today is March 12th, 2023, and thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of our program. I'm the host, Crystal Simeon. So if you're joining the program for the very first time, it's nice to meet you. I am the owner of Island Learning Grenada, and we are registered under the creative industry in Grenada, focused on education on history, heritage, and culture of Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. Each Sunday, at the same time, 7 p.m. Grenada time. I know the clocks have moved back somewhat or forward, depending on where you are in the world as of last night. But it's typically 7 p.m. Grenada time is where the program goes live on via our Facebook page. We also want to shout out Pineapple Marketing and Communications for bringing the program on their Facebook page too as well. So you can either watching it right now from Island Learning Grenada's Facebook page or Pineapple Marketing and Communications page. So the most important thing I want you to do for me is to share the live. Whenever you share the live, it allows us to reach a broader audience. So hit the share button on the Facebook page. Right underneath this video you're watching, there's the share button. Hit that share button and share the program. Whenever you share the program on your Facebook page, it allows your friends on Facebook, however how many friends you have, 500, 1,000, 2,000 friends, whatever number of friends you have on Facebook, they will also view the program, right? So share the live and help us to reach a broader audience. If you are watching via YouTube, for those who have subscribed to our content via YouTube, thank you for subscribing to YouTube. If you are watching for the first time, ensure to hit the subscribe so that you stay connected to all of our content on our YouTube channel, and especially when we go live. Today's topic, what we're talking about, as I said last week, I spoke about the importance of March. So March is a very, very historic month in terms of Grenada's history, heritage, and culture. This week gone, we celebrated International Women's Day, March 8th. So we're talking about women in Grenada's history today. Touch a bit about that, in particular to history, heritage, and culture. There are lots of examples of women in history in many areas, whether it's sports, whether it's different in business. We're not going to touch so much on that, but we are going to talk about some women in terms of history, heritage, and culture. As well as tomorrow is the March 13th. So March 13th is a significant date in terms of Grenada's history. It was the date of the start of the Grenada Revolution events of 1979, when Maurice Bishop would have become the Prime Minister of the first revolutionary government of Grenada, the People's Revolutionary Government, or PRG. So we'll also be talking a bit about March 13th events and what took place on that fateful March 13th, 1979, back almost 40 plus years since those events took place. There's also an activity coming up at, I think, the Grenada National Museum tomorrow with Ewart Lane. He's the author of this book. So if you don't have it and you're interested in learning more about what happened on those events, this is the book. We Move Tonight by Joseph Ewart Lane, that speaks about the events of March 13th, 1979. You can purchase it either at if you're in Grenada, the Art and Soul Bookstore in Spiceland Mall. Internationally, you can purchase it on Amazon, and we can share the link here, right? So we're talking about the March 13th events. So let's take in our intro video. We have a packed program for today, and we don't want to waste any time. So let's take in our intro video and come right back to it. Of course, share the live while we are on our little break here. Share the live so we can reach our broader audience. The most that you can do to support us is to share the live. Thank you. So we are right back to our program. As I said, we're talking about two topics today: women in Grenada's history. So we're gonna start off our program today looking at women in Grenada's history. And then we're going to move into talking about the March 13th, 1979, and some of the activities that took place on that date. Back in 1979, at the very starter onset of the Grenada Revolution. So those are the two topics that we'll be covering in today's episode of Island Learning Grenada Sunday. So share the live. I hope you shared the live. So share the live on your Facebook page. It helps us to reach our broader audience. So share the live. So just before we get started here, I'm going to take a quick commercial break again and then get set up so we can go right into talking about some great women that have contributed to Grenada's history, heritage, and culture. In the sense, not so much to the field, but in terms of what we're talking about, historically, women who were the first in Grenada's history. So that's what we're talking about. Women who were the first in Grenada's history in different aspects. They were the first. So we're going to speak about and share who are some of these women. Of course, it is not all the women who were first. These are just some examples. There are many more examples, and we hope over time we could continue to share more about these outstanding women and who have paved the way in terms of being first in respective areas of Grenada's life, society, history, heritage, culture, business, sports, everything like that, right? So we hope to grow our content there, of course. So let's take a quick commercial break, and then we'll get right back into our program. Of course, share the live so that we can reach our broader audience. Thank you. And we'll be right back. So we are back with our program. Thank you, of course, for tuning in. So let's get straight into it, looking at some women in Grenada's history. So let's get into the program here. Okay, so the first woman we're going to talk about today is in terms of the first governor of Grenada. So before Grenada became an independent nation in 1974, we had a woman, a female governor. Her name was Hilda Bino, later more commonly known as Dame Hilda Bino. So a little bit about Hilda Bino. So Hilda Bino was born in 1921. She was originally from Crochu in St. Andrews. She migrated to Trinidad, where she would have taught at the St. Joseph's Convent in Trinidad for several years. She went on to study medicine and became one of Grenada's first female medical practitioners or doctors, having studied medicine in the UK. While in Trinidad, she married a Trinidadian by the name of Peter Bino, and they will later have two sons, Roland and Michael Bino. She worked across the region, including in Trinidad and Guyana and Grenada, practicing medicine as a doctor. And in 1968, under, of course, at the time it was Sir Eric Matthew Gary, who was in charge of Grenada as the he wasn't prime minister because we were not yet independent, but premier. In 1968, Sir Eric Matthew Gary appointed Dame Hilda Bino as governor of the Associated State of Grenada. So before independence, Grenada was under associated statehood. Associated statehood is basically you're not in control of all of your affairs. You have most control of like political, economic, and social affairs, but you don't have control over defense and foreign policy. So those were the two areas that Grenada under associated statehood did not have control, that was still retained by the British Crown or monarch. So Dame Hilda Bino became the first governor of Grenada as an associated state. She was female, and she served in that position as governor of Grenada until Grenada achieved independence in 1974. In 1969, the official title of Dame, which is a title that has to be given by the British monarch, which would have been Queen Elizabeth II at the time, Hilda Bino was appointed Dame and held that title until for the rest of her life. It's a title granted for life, actually. So once you get that title of Dame, you're granted that title for life. So Dame Hilda Bino, first female governor of Grenada. The next woman we want to talk about briefly here is Cynthia Gary. So Cynthia Gary became the first female member of parliament. So a little bit about Cynthia Gary and who she was. So Cynthia Gary was born in 1923. She was originally from the parish of St. David, Central St. David to be exact. She was the wife of the first Prime Minister of Grenada, Sir Eric Matthew Gary. So Eric and Cynthia married in around 1944, 1945. They went on to have two daughters, Marcel and Jennifer Gary. So as wife of Sir Eric Matthew Gary, together they were both in politics. So both husband and wife were in politics. Eric Matthew Gary would go on to lead the GLP party and eventually become the political leader and also the Prime Minister of Grenada, where he would have served from 1974 right up to the March 13th events of 1979. And Cynthia Gary, she served in the House of Representatives as MP, having won her seat first in 1961 when she ran for the seat that would have been the constituency of St. David. So she represented the constituency of St. David from 1961 right up to 1979 with the overthrow of the Gary government on March 13th. Cynthia Gary was the first female to be elected to sit in the House of Representatives when she was elected in 1961 as part of Gary's government. From 1974 to 1979, she held the position of the Ministries of Education and Culture. So that is Cynthia Gary. Moving on, so we have another remarkable woman, Gertrude Protein, and she's not as well known in terms of much has not been shared about who she was and her life, etc. There is a book though on her. I'll speak to that a little bit later. But Gertrude Protein was born in 1914 in St. Vincent. So she was not a Grenadian by birth, but Grenadian claim, right? Sometimes we claim persons who are not born in Grenada but have contributed or have ties to Grenada as our own. So Gertrude would be an example of a female who was not born in Grenada, but we claim her as our own. So she was originally from St. Vincent and as a young girl moved to Grenada where she made her contribution essentially. So Gertrude should have taught at the Anniken High School in Grenada for several years before moving on to serve as the first woman to serve on the Legislative Council of Grenada. The Legislative Council of Grenada was a body that was established, again it's another pre-independence part of the legislative arm of government. So we have the associated state, but we also have this Legislative Council that advised on legislative affairs and has given advice to the Gary government at the time. So Gertrude Protein was the first woman to serve on the Legislative Council of Grenada. Most importantly, Gertrude is remembered as being the first lady of tourism. She co-founded what is today the Grenada Hotel Association and traveled throughout the region and internationally on many tourism missions promoting Grenada. So she was the first lady of tourism. That's what history would assign her contribution to be. In a couple of years ago, a book has been written. If you are interested in the book, you can purchase it at Belmont Estate in St. Patrick's. The book is called Gertrude Protein, Glimpses into the Life of a Great Grenadian, and it's a book written by the owner of Belmont Estate, Shadell Nayak Compton. Again, the copies are sold on location at Belmont Estate, so you can Get your copy if you are interested in learning more about the contributions of Gertrude Protein, who was the first woman to serve on the Legislative Council of Grenada. Margaret Nichols. So Margaret Nichols, the first woman president of the Senate. So Margaret Nichols was the first woman president of the Senate. From since then to now, there have been several women who have served as president of the Senate, including Leslie Sion served for a period of time. She's a lawyer. She served for a period of time as president of the Senate. So there are several women who have served since the time of Margaret Nichols, but Margaret Nichols is recorded in history as being the first. She served during the period of 1990 to 1995 under the government of Sir Nicholas Bradford, who was the prime minister at the time, and the ruling party would have been the NDC administration. So Margaret Nichols. Gloria Payne Banfield, still alive today and very active in service in many ways. Gloria Payne Banfield was she became one of, not the first, but one of the first female leaders of a political party. So she in 2003 was elected the leader of the GULP party. The GULP party was the party originally formed by Sir Eric Matthew Gary, who became the first prime minister, and in 2003 the party was looking for new leadership. They had lost election several times since then. In the 1990s, they were not as popular as they used to be, as in the 60s and the 70s. So Gloria Payne Banfield became the political leader of the GULP for a period of time. She is no longer the political leader of that party, but she would have served in the capacity as leader for several years. Gloria Payne Banfield is most also noted as being a cabinet secretary under the Eric Matthew Gary government, as well as she held the post of permanent secretary under the Ministry of Planning under the People's Revolutionary Government under the Grenada Revolution. So we'll take a quick break here and come back and continue, of course, with looking at women, some first women in Grenada history. So let's take a quick break and be right back. Of course, if you're watching the program, you've just tuned in, ensure to share the live on your Facebook page and help us to reach our broader audience. So we are back and we continue with our topic today. One of our topics, looking at some female first in terms of Grenada's history. So let's move on now to Joan Purcell. So Joan Purcell, as history records it, is the first official female to have led a political party on the books. As I mentioned, Gloria Payne Banfield is also an example of a female first in terms of leading a political party, but on the official books in terms of time and when the sequence took place, Joan Purcell, history would record as being the first female to lead a political party, and that political party would have is the NDC. So in 1999, Joan Purcell became the first female to lead a political party, that party being the NDC. That was after the 99 elections, where the NNP administration would have won all seats 15-0, and the Right Honorable Dr. Kit Mitchell retained power for a second term. Before Joan Purcell, George Brizan would have served as Prime Minister in 1994 to 1995 and would have retained the leader of the political party NDC. But around 1999, Joan Purcell emerged as the leader of the political party, the NDC. Joan Purcell is known as having won the Carriacou seat. She served as MP for Carriacou in the first NDC administration from 1990 to 1995. Our current Governor General, Dame Cecile Grenada, is also a first. She is the first female Governor General of Grenada. She would have been appointed the Governor General of Grenada in 2013 by the NNP administration upon their return to governance in the 2013 elections. A little bit about Cecile Grenada. She's a businesswoman. She owns De La Grenade Industries, which specializes in the production of jams and jellies, whether it's nutmeg or guava, pepper, jams and jellies. She's trained as a food scientist, having been trained in the United States. She holds a doctorate, to be exact, in the area of food science. She's originally from Laborie St. George's, attended the St. Louis Girls RC and also St. Joseph's Convent St. George's. She comes from a family of that have had some contributions in terms of political governance in Grenada's history, right? So there are examples within her immediate family, her ancestors that would have played a role in Grenada's politics. So our current Governor General is also a first in terms of being the first female Governor General of Grenada. So in terms of all the first, we have had a first, other first. I don't have pictures of them, but we have Winifred Strachan. She was the first leader of the opposition to be a female, and that was back many moons ago. So in terms of first, I think the only thing we're still waiting on is to have a first female prime minister. So maybe in many years to come, right, we may have a first female prime minister and have that on our history books. Other islands have surpassed us in terms of reaching that feat already. Barbados has had this, the current Mia Motley. Trinidad has had Kamala, right? Jamaica has had that's one I can't remember her name, but she was the Portia Simpson, right? Portia Simpson was the first female prime minister of Jamaica, right? So Grenada in future maybe will have one. We continue in terms of looking at women. So again, Phyllis Code was not a Grenadian. She's Jamaican by birth. but history has us being the first well, she was the first in terms of she was the president of the National Women's Organization under the PRG, which was a massive movement, leading thousands and thousands of women and making many contributions today in terms of Grenada society. So some of the achievements of the National Women's Organization under the PRG included the starting up of daycare centers. So daycare centers where women who are working could leave their babies during the day and go to work. That was started under the National Women's Organization. There was also lots of training of women in skilled and trade areas was another achievement of the National Women's Organization under the PRG. And there are several women who played a critical role in that organization. Phyllis Cole was the president, but we also have other women such as Rita Joseph. We have Valerie Conward is also another woman who would have played a major part of the National Women's Organization along with Rita Joseph. So these are just some examples of Grenadian women contributing to that whole movement to really educate and help to advance the progress of women was really the aim and goal of the National Women's Organization under the PRG. Phyllis Cole would have been imprisoned. She was imprisoned as one of the 17 for the October 19th, 1983 events, which led to the death of Maurice Bishop, who was assassinated on Fort George. So she was imprisoned for many years and then released in 2000 due to medical reasons and died in 2020 in Jamaica. So Phyllis Cole, not Grenadian by birth, but definitely having a role in terms of Grenada's history. Just a little plug before we take our break and move into another segment as we continue to look at some women in Grenada being first. If you're following our page or you have not yet followed our Facebook page, hit the follow button and follow our page. If you're liking our content, of course, hit like Island Learning Grenada. Of course, you can like Pineapple Marketing and Communication if you haven't liked it, if you're viewing the program there too as well, but also to like Island Learning Grenada's Facebook page or follow our Facebook page, Island Learning Grenada. So let's look at some other women. So we're moving out of the political space and looking at some other contributions of women in Grenada's, when we look at history, heritage, culture, other aspects of Grenada's life. So Henrietta Millicent Douglas. So Henrietta Millicent Douglas was the first female recorded to be have a leading role in the creative and I got tongue twisted there, in the creative and performing arts in Grenada. So there's a lot of excitement and anticipation with the starting up of the creative economy. But the start of the creative economy dates back many moons to the days of the 1930s and 40s and 50s with the work of Henrietta Millicent Douglas. So she studied music. She studied music in the United States at the Royal Academy of Music and earned her education in music and performing arts. She returned to Grenada. Her family is originally from St. Andrews, Henrietta Douglas. So she returned to Grenada upon studying music and became the owner of 2 theaters in Grenada. So performing arts theater, so the Gaiety Theater, which was located on the old Esplanade, what is today the Esplanade Mall area and that whole Esplanade area on Melville Street. Well, before it was developed like that, there was just an old Esplanade area, right? So there was a performing arts theater, the Gaiety Theater, and they put on many theater shows for Grenadians. And they also traveled internationally, right? They traveled internationally and performed in the United States. Several of their plays. Henrietta Douglas also owned another performing theater in Grenville called the Eastern Theater. So she owned two theaters performing theater arts in Grenada. So Henrietta Millicent Douglas, the first female to be credited with contribution towards the creative and performing arts in Grenada. We have Monica Joseph, who is still alive today. So Judge Monica Joseph, she's now retired. She became the first female judge in Grenada in 1982. So since then, there are many more female judges who are Grenadians, but Monica Joseph is the first female, would have become the first female judge in Grenada. So she served as a judge for many months and retired a few years back and went on to be to lead the first Integrity Commission. So when the Integrity Commission was started in 2015, Judge Monica Joseph was the first head of the Integrity Commission. Currently it is Lady Anade Trotman Joseph, who is the head of the Integrity Commission. But the work of the commission started with Judge Monica Joseph. So this lady, more known in the Grenadian diaspora, especially the Grenadians living in Canada, and especially if you're in the GTA or the Greater Toronto area. But Jean Augustine is a Grenadian, and she broke lots of historical records in terms of both in Grenada but most so in Canada, of becoming the first Black African descent female to be elected as a Canadian to the Canada's House of Commons, which is the House of Parliament, as member of Parliament for the Greater Toronto area. So she was elected in 1993 and served for right up until 2006. So she had a pretty long stint as a member of Parliament for the Greater Toronto area, and many different books. A lot of social schools programs are named after Jean Augustine. There's also a documentary on Jean Augustine, her life and contribution, and many articles have been written about Jean Augustine. But she was Grenadian by birth, of course, migrated to Canada and served as member of Parliament, breaking records in history in Canada. Of course, we acknowledge her as a Grenadian too, as well, being the first female of Grenadian descent or heritage to hold political office overseas. So that's a huge accomplishment to break that barrier in terms of overseas, right? So Jean Augustine. And then of course we have to wrap up this segment before we take a break. Jennifer Hostin. So Jennifer Hostin won the Miss World title, and it was a shock at the time to many people that if a place that most people have never heard about Grenada at the time back in 1970, most people did not hear about Grenada. Grenada became actually more well known after 1983, and the Grenada Revolution would have increased the prominence of Grenada. Some may argue good or bad, but before then Grenada was not well known. But in 1970, Jennifer Hostin, originally from St. George's, Grenada, went up for the Miss World title and won, right? And she broke, of course, in terms of history, that was a big accomplishment to have a small island, Grenada, winning Miss World title. It was during a period of time amidst a lot of racial issues going on in South Africa, and the apartheid situation there, etc. So in 1970, Jennifer Hostin. So there is a movie that tells the story of Jennifer Hostin that you can check out. But Jennifer Hostin, notably the first female in terms of winning an international queen title, that being Miss World in 1970. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more, looking at more women and female first. So we are back. Of course, if you're tuning into our program, ensure that you're following us on Island Learning Grenada Facebook page. If you're liking our content, you can also like our Facebook page, Island Learning Grenada. If you are watching via our YouTube channel, Island Learning Grenada, ensure that you subscribe to our channel. You hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and that you are a subscriber, and then you'll get notified every time that we go live. So let's continue with looking at some female first. We're going to turn on to now culture, and some first in terms of culture, as we wrap up this segment here, and looking at some first female in terms of different aspects of Grenada's life, society, politics, governance, etc. There are many examples. We're just giving some examples. There are many more examples, and in time we'll continue to grow our content here in terms of female first and what we share. But let's move on now to culture and look at some female first in terms of culture. So we have Cynthia Oakes, better known as Lady Cinty, originally, of course, from the parish of St. Patrick's, the historical parish of St. Patrick's. In 1983, Lady Cinty won the Calypso Monarch crown and became the first female Calypso Monarch of Grenada. Some other women would become winners later on in terms of the Calypso Monarch. We will have Keturah George several years ago. We had Pamela Courtney. We also had Akima Paul. So these are just some examples of other females that would have won the Calypso Monarch title. But Lady Cinty was the first female Calypso Monarch in 1983. So she won the title in the year that was the year. October would have been the Grenada Revolution, so the August of that year, she won the crown. Her two compositions was The Future of the Revolution and Trip Down Hill. So those were the two compositions that won her the Calypso Monarch in 1983. Lady Cinty is the mother of former soca monarch champions Lily Spack and Electrify, who are soca artists in Grenada, and I guess they're continuing the Not in calypso as yet, but in terms of soca. In costume and mass band leadership, Helen Marie of Helen Marie and Associates. So Helen Marie has had over 20 years in the costume and mass band leadership. So costume design and mass band, having a mass band on the road each carnival season. Helen Marie is a female mass band leader and the longest serving female mass band leader to date in costume and mass bands in Grenada. Her band, Helen Marie and Associates, typically each year they have a children's band as well as an adult band, and they have claimed Band of the Year title on several occasions and have won Kiddies Carnival in terms of the Kiddies band section on many occasions, as well as on the road Tuesday, Carnival Tuesday, the parade of the bands, winning a Band of the Year title. So Helen Marie of Helen Marie and Associates. So look forward to them on the road. This year, 2023, Spice Mass, the hype is on, the excitement is on. The launch is going to be in April. So in about 1 month's time, we're going to have the launch of Spice Mass. The theme is out, the evolution of Spice Mass. So we're excited to see the evolution of all the things that's going to be taking place with Spice Mass. There was recently on Friday the announcement of the new CEO. So we want to say congrats to Mr. Cecil Noel, a long-time cultural practitioner, especially in terms of the steel band and his contribution to the Comancheros steel band orchestra in St. Paul's and other aspects of Carnival. I don't know all, but I know definitely in terms of the Comancheros steel band, he has had a key role there in terms of their musical arrangement and the whole leadership of the band. So congrats to Mr. Cecil Noel on being CEO, and we're excited and hyped up for Spice Mass 2023. If you are in the diaspora and you haven't got your tickets as yet, see about getting your tickets to come down and experience Spice Mass 2023. Again, we're looking at culture. So this one I wanted to put in here, Miss Pinky Fabulous. This year she would have gone down to Trinidad before the pre-hype of the Trinidad Carnival, but still most noteworthy, first female soca artist to represent Grenada on the soca stage, and she would have traveled to Trinidad in 2023 to participate in some of the activities there. Of course, with a hit single that's still going, even in this current year, 2023, Take On and Stay Quiet, right? So another female of notable mention to make here, Pinky Fabulous, full name Pinky Francis of Belmont St. George's, right? And last, as we wrap up this segment on female first and looking at some of the first in females in different aspects in culture, there has been and still remains one female who has captured the road match title, and that was way back Miney with her hit 10,000 Masqueraders. Right, she would have won the road match title in 2000 and I don't want to say the wrong year, but in the 2000s, more than 10 years now since that winning of that title, and she still remains the only female to capture the road match title. So still looking forward to have more women in the cultural space, the soca space, the calypso space, and dominate. There has been many examples of women, but in terms of winning titles, we're still looking for some more. So That's it as we wrap up some first in terms of women and looking at first women. Again, this was a commemoration of the International Women's Day, March 8th. That we just celebrated last Wednesday, to talk about women in terms of first female in their respective areas. On our Facebook page, we provided several other examples in terms of sports. We have Afi Fletcher, who is first female in terms of cricket. So we have Afi Fletcher. We also have in non-traditional sports, we have table tennis. We have Rosemary Diner. She has been a leading role in table tennis, training as well as playing herself. So these are some examples of women and female first in their field. So as I said, there's a lot of examples of female first, and we hope to grow our content in that area with time. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back to and move into some March 13th information. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. So we are back. We are back, and for the next 10 minutes, you're gonna spend a little bit of time to talk about March 13th, as tomorrow is the anniversary of the March 13th, 1979 events. So we'll talk a little bit about March 13th events briefly. Again, there is the Grenada National Museum is having a talk, a discussion on March 13th, and Joseph Ewart Lane is going to be present and sharing some of the information and some of the from this book. We move tonight, The Making of the Grenada Revolution. This is the book written by Joseph Ewart Lane. He was one of the 17 who would have been in prison for the 1983 events, and now is currently, I think he's a legal practitioner. So this is the book. We move tonight, so there's going to be an event tomorrow. Check out the Facebook page of the Grenada National Museum to learn more if you're interested. I'm just giving them a plug here, right? But I would have read this book here, the We Move Tonight. Some very interesting things in that book. Some things that it's good to read and hear the story first. And of course, it's only one perspective, right? It's only one perspective of the activities and the events that took place on March 12th. It began on March 12th and then moved into March 13th. Definitely, there's many other stories out there, many of them undocumented, of ordinary Grenadians who have played some role in the March 13th events, or would have been bystanders and witnessed and observed the events that took place on March 13th, 1979. So definitely there's lots more out there in terms of what actually took place, but this is our first hand account from one perspective of the events that took place on March 13th. So March 13th is the official date on records when the Gary government was overthrown by the New Jewel movement. The New Jewel movement was the political party led by Maurice Bishop and several of his comrades, and they overthrew Gary. Eric Matthew Gary was out of Ireland at the time. He was attending a meeting in the United States when the events took place on March 13th. So the events began really on the night of March 12th. So on the night of March 12th is when where several members of the NJM began to put together concrete moves on plans they had. They had these plans months on organizing, mobilizing. They would have imported weapons and so forth into Grenada, and plans were in place. March 12th was just the mobilizing of putting the plans into action. But the plans had been there and had been building. There was a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of hate, and hate is usually a strong word. But there was a lot of hate in the country for the Eric Gary regime, and things all being done. The activities of the Mongoose Gang, which was Gary's own private army going around and making people's lives uncomfortable was what it was, right? So there was a lot of discomfort in the country with the Gary regime and what was happening. So that created itself its own natural organic support for the events of 1979 and helped the New Jewel movement to really grow in popularity and support. So some of the key persons who would have participated in the events of March 13th would have been persons such as Unison Whiteman. So Unison Whiteman was originally from St. David. He taught at PBC at some time. He was educated in the area of economics and politics at Howard University and is the founder of Jewel. So Jewel is the second part of NJM. So it started with Jewel, which was joint endeavor for welfare, education, and liberation of people. That's the meaning of Jewel. And that was later joined together with Maurice Bishop's group called Movement of Assemblies for People, MAP. So when these two groups came together, they created NJM, which is the New Jewel Movement. And that was the political party or political organization which overthrew the Gary government in 1979. But the Jewel part of it was started by Unison Whiteman. Other key players were Selwyn Strawn. He was originally from Woburn, St. George's. We had Teddy Victor. He was a farmer and small businessman. We had Kenrick Radix. So Kenrick Radix was a lawyer by profession, trained in the UK. There was Maurice Bishop, another young lawyer who had been trained in the UK and was the founder of the Movement of Assemblies for MAP upon his return to Grenada from the UK in around 1973. And MAP was a mobilizing group of the NJM. So MAP was responsible for mobilizing all the young people. There were many youth groups during that period in Grenada's history, and many of them came about because of the activities and contributions of the work of Maurice Bishop under the Movement of Assemblies for People, MAP. Other key players in the events of 1979, Bernard Code. He was a university lecturer, so that was what he was. He was lecturing at the UE Trinidad. He was trained as an economist, having achieved both his bachelor's and master's in economics in the United States, and would later become the deputy political leader of the New Jewel movement. His wife, of course, Phyllis Code, Jamaican by birth, but married to Bernard Code. So together they were a pair, Bernard and Phyllis Code. We also had Hudson Austin. He passed last year, but he was commander of the army, and he was really responsible for mobilizing a lot of the underground foot soldiers. So Hudson Austin, he too would have been imprisoned for the 1983 events. Leon Cornwall, Ewart Lane, of course, the author of this book, would have been a key player too as well. Einstein Louison, Chucky Venture. So these are some of the names associated with the it's a long list, but these are some of the names associated with the 1979 events that took place on March 13th. So what took place? So in the wee hours of March 13th, the very, very wee hours, Maurice Bishop and several of his comrades, including Hudson Austin, Selwyn Strand, Kenrick Radix, they gathered at Freedom Hill. So Freedom Hill is an area in Lansapin, St. George's. So Freedom Hill was the meeting point, or the starting point for gathering these NGM folks and their supporters, but it was mostly the key folks, Maurice Bishop Code, Selwyn Strand, etc. And together they left the Freedom Hill location and moved towards the True Blue Barracks. So the True Blue Barracks was the stronghold for part of Gary's army, not the entire thing, but it was a significant stronghold. So the True Blue Barracks held hundreds of soldiers under Gary's army. So the troop of NJM folks, one of their tactics was to take down the True Blue Barracks. So they made that move from Freedom Hill to the True Blue Barracks, where they attacked the barracks, and the barracks eventually was burned to the ground. It was ablaze with fire and burned to the ground. So that was the first breaking of the revolution, the burning and capture of the True Blue Bay Barracks, ending one of the strongholds of the Gary government at the time. They were also setting up of roadblocks across the island of Grenada. So roadblocks were set up in many points in Tantine, in other places across the island. Roadblocks were set up. A lot of the roadblocks were based on this account of what took place, were manned by young people. Young people who were part of youth groups that were encouraged by the movement of Assemblies of Peoples, MAP, led by Maurice Bishop. So lots of young people were involved in roadblocks to block the road to the Christian movement of people, and of course to the Christian movement of Gary supporters, to really be able to bring control of the situation. So there were many roadblocks and checkpoints. One of the second tactics of the March 13th, once they had taken the barracks, was the surrendering of police stations. So one by one, police stations surrendered to the group of NJM that were going around and taking control of the island. In many ways, the police station. So police station surrendered and they issued a white flag and they surrendered to the revolutionary forces. So that was a second set of activities that took place on March 13th, the surrendering of police stations. Even Gary's wife, Cynthia Gary, was at a police station, took refuge in a police station when all the events started to take place on March 13th. Everywhere that the revolutionaries went, they left behind a revolution flag. So the revolution actually had its own flag, a flag different from the national flag. So it was a red and white flag, a red circle on a white background, and that flag became known as the revolution flag. On all the different points that the revolutionary forces passed, they left the flag. Hundreds of those flags were prepared ahead of the moves of March 13th, 1979, and those flags were placed in locations as the revolutionary forces began to take power at different points across Grenada at the time. The first formal announcement and acknowledgement that Grenada had a new government and the NJM was now in control came across Radio Free Grenada. So Radio Free Grenada was the communication, it was a radio and became the main communication channel of the People's Revolutionary Government, which was what Maurice Bishop and NJM called their government. So the government had a name. It wasn't the NJM government. It was the People's Revolutionary Government, or PRG. So Radio Free Grenada was the radio that on March 13th, Grenadians at home where they were heard on the radio that an announcement, it came straight from Maurice Bishop, announcing that he was now Prime Minister of Grenada and the NJM was now in charge of the island. Radio Free Grenada would continue to become the critical communication medium for all PRG communications and also the events that took place on the 4th on October 19th, 1983. The announcement of the death of Maurice Bishop would have also came through the Radio Free Grenada. So Radio Free Grenada, that's how Grenadians knew that official. And when it came across Radio Free Grenada was also when throughout the region news spread that Grenada had a new government. Maurice Bishop was now the Prime Minister and had taken control of the island. So from Radio Free Grenada, news, that announcement sparked news across the region, and the Prime Minister of Jamaica, at the time would have been Michael Manley, he was the first one to call and acknowledge Maurice Bishop as the new Prime Minister of Grenada. He was also later followed by the Prime Minister, of Guyana, who was Bonham at the time, Peter Bonham. He also called and acknowledged the new political governance, the People's Revolutionary Government, and its leader, Maurice Bishop, as the official government of Grenada. So those are some of the events that took place on March 13th. Again, this is one perspective. There are many more stories that need to be told and documented about the events that took place on the fateful day of March 13th, what took place on March 12th, and even the months leading up to March 12th and 13th, what were the experiences of Grenadians across the trial and state of Grenada, Carrick, and PT Martinique. So definitely those stories still remain to be told and to be shared in some format, whether in a book or in a digital format, through a film, can be shared. So that's our program today. So our learning today was about women, some of the first female. We shared about that, as well as the events of March 13, 1979, as tomorrow is the anniversary of the March 13th events of 1979. We'll take a quick break and then come back with the wrap up of our program today. So we're back. So thank you for viewing our program today. Join us for another episode of Island Learning Grenada. We'll be back here next Sunday at the same time, 7 p.m. Grenada's time. And we will be sharing about Julian Fedon and the Fedon's rebellion, March 13. That's the next historic event that March is known, associated with. It's Fedon's rebellion, the Fedon's rebellion of 1975. So we'll be talking a bit about that in next week's program of Island Learning Grenada. So thank you very much for viewing our program today, and I hope that you learned something about either the first females, as we marked International Women's Day on March 8th, or the events of March 13, 1979. Continue to share our Facebook page with your friends and family, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Island Learning Grenada. We also have offer online courses on Grenada's history, heritage, and culture, virtual classes, and we do have a school program, a full school program, which includes learning materials and access to a learning platform for children. So we have that program for schools. You can contact us on 535-4745. That's our WhatsApp number, or reach out to us via our Facebook page. So if schools are interested in learning more, definitely reach out to us on our Facebook page or on WhatsApp, 535-4745. So thank you very much for viewing. Have a blessed week, and stay tuned to next week's program. Take care. Bye.